Welcome to the Instagram Stories for Friday, March 14th. I'm your host, Daniel Hill, and this is the weekend edition. Today on the show, we're going to do something a little bit different. Typically on the show, I cover Instagram news, TikTok news, YouTube news, Threads news, Edits news, and occasionally Twitter if it's appropriate. That's rare. That's a lot of platforms for one human who is doing this as a hobby to cover. With that context, I recently heard a talk from the CEO of Bluesky on the future of social media, which was given at South by Southwest. We're going to have a quick word from our sponsor, and then we'll get right into the interview. Welcome back. If you're anything like me, you might not know a lot about Bluesky. Why does it exist? Aren't there so many other social media platforms to spend time on? Why did we need another one? In this talk, the CEO of Bluesky is going to explain all of those things. Just a little bit of context. The CEO of Bluesky is named Jay Graber, and she is a female. I'm only saying that because the interviewer is a male, and since you cannot see the physical people talking, it's a little bit confusing who is who. Here's the clip.
What is Bluesky? How is it different? How is it not just another social media property?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Bluesky is an open social network. So our goal has been to make social media more like the web. And that's the goal of, building a protocol instead of a platform. And the way that this plays out is, for example, we don't downrank links because we see ourselves as a portal to the open web, sort of a gateway where you can access the social web. And our goal is focusing on user choice and developer freedom. So users have a choice in what they see and interact with, and developers can freely build without us getting in the way. And the key to this openness is really the @ protocol, which is the foundation that Bluesky is built upon. This is an open protocol for building social networks, and this is what guarantees openness over the long run.
And so right now, as I mentioned, there's over 30 million users. What kind of users are there now? What kind of communities are using Bluesky?
A lot of people who want a better social experience. So we started off early on with a lot of developers, artists, journalists, scientists, people who are interested in trying out new social modalities. And recently we've had a lot of new communities come on. So the sports community is growing, for example, since we added short-form videos. And overall, there's a lot of overlapping communities on Bluesky because you can really customize it to what you want it to be. If you want to just see, science news and cat pictures, you can make that your corner of the network. And so there's a lot of communities that overlap in interesting ways.
So, the Bluesky team is a fairly small team. How big is the team right now?
About 21 people.
21 people. 30 million plus users. Obviously, it's been growing a lot. Yes, cheer. Yes, yes. So as a small team, as a rapidly growing social network, but also a protocol, and you're doing both of those things at once, what have been sort of the biggest challenges that you're facing as a company?
There's been a lot of challenges. I would say actually that tension of building a usable social app that preserves what people like about social and is as usable and convenient as people expect while scaling up on an open protocol is one of the core tensions and core challenges. So we've grown from 0 to 32 million users in 2 years. Building any sort of social network, that's hard to do because every time you grow by an order of magnitude, you have to rethink how you're doing things, both organizationally and technically. And so the technical challenges have been huge, but at every stage we've rethought how we're doing things, and we've made sure that we have grown things in such a way that we preserve openness while scaling up. So that's involved some trade-offs, like early on in 2023 when we first announced that we had an app in beta, there was a lot of excitement, a lot of people wanted to come on, but at that time our choices were to scale up in a more traditional way and go scale things out on AWS, which would be very expensive and would sort of tie us into a more centralized application. Or we could go ahead and execute on the original plan, which was to build out federation behind the scenes so that our internal services were federated and then open it up to others. So we went ahead and did that. That took a few extra months, and then when we opened up in February 2024, we had a federated internal network, and we opened it up to federation with external parties. So now you can self-host your data and interact with the rest of the network. But that was a trade-off, and doing that while building an app where you're constantly trying to iterate on user feedback and grow in response to people's questions, comments, preferences, means that it's a bit like building the wings on an airplane once it's already flying.
So I think a little bit later in the conversation, I want to dig in a little bit more on the decentralization, the nature of federation, why that's important, how that all works. But I did want to address one question that comes up a lot around Bluesky, because it originated as an idea at Twitter, and with sort of Jack Dorsey announcing it and endorsing it and interviewing you to sort of take the lead. There are a lot of questions about what is the relationship between Bluesky and Twitter and Jack Dorsey as well. So do you want to address that?
Yeah, Bluesky is fully independent. It always has been. But it started off as a project internal to Twitter. So in 2019, I was a decentralized social network researcher. I was building my own social network, and I saw on Twitter Jack Dorsey post that Twitter is funding a protocol that Twitter will someday run on. And I'd been building decentralized social protocols, doing a lot of research in this area. So I got really excited, and I DM'd the Twitter account. And they put me in a chat room with some other folks, I think, including yourself. And for about a year and a half, that was the state of the Bluesky project, just a chat room. And mid-2021, Twitter finally did some interviewing, chose a lead, chose me to lead that project. And then because Twitter had moved pretty slowly getting up to that point, I decided it would be best if we were an independent organization, and then we were a contractor with Twitter. So we were contracting to build the app protocol, which Twitter would someday run on. But things changed very quickly, and it's good that we had that independence.
That's an understatement. Yes.
Yeah. So that independence allowed us to go ahead and build what we were originally framing as a reference client. So Bluesky was an example of us dog-fooding the protocol we'd built to test it out, make sure that we could actually build a scalable social app, but then it became more and more of a real product because we had all this demand. As soon as we put up a wait list saying we're building an app, we had 1 million user signups within a few weeks. And so we knew then that, all right, we should launch this thing and build it for scale.
But it's entirely independent of Twitter, has no connection.
Yeah, entirely independent. Early on, Twitter had a board seat, but then that ended when the contracts were cut, and since then we've raised money on our own and continued to build an open social network carrying through that original vision of being a protocol that builds a microblogging app.
Okay, so now that you have the background of what Bluesky is and how it got started, I want to play part of the interview where the CEO of Bluesky talks about how it's decentralized and all the various things that you can do because it's decentralized. That's going to be after the break. Stick around. Welcome back. We're listening to an interview with the CEO of Bluesky, Jay Graber. And in this section of the interview, she talks about what makes Bluesky different from all the other social media platforms that currently exist.
One of the things, and I've been talking about this a little bit, and I think is sort of relevant to this discussion on the toxicity, which is that I think for the past, I'll say decade or decade and a half, however long you want to look at it, users have been put in this mindset of what I've been referring to as learned helplessness when it comes to social media. As a network gets big enough, the network itself has so much control, they start to make things worse and worse for the users. And users have no real way to deal with it other than to complain to billionaires or to the government. Right now, both of those are the same thing, apparently. Not a great situation. So one of the things that you've said, and I think you guys now have some ads making this claim, is that Bluesky is billionaire-proof. And I know that a lot of people have been concerned that, oh, well, Bluesky is going to follow this same path. It's going to inshitify, and billionaires are going to come in, and they're going to take it over and do all the same bad stuff that they've maybe done with some other platforms that will remain nameless. So how can you say that Bluesky is billionaire-proof? What does that even mean?
Yeah, so the core thing here is where we've tried to rethink social from first principles and build an open protocol. So this is what, at the end, guarantees that users will always have the right to leave. And that means that all the code is open source. So right now, if you want to clone Bluesky and start over with a new version of it, you can do that. You can run your own version of it. Or even within it, you can run your own feed. You can run self-hosting, just like a piece of it. And so that means that depending on what aspect you're dissatisfied with, you can find alternatives, or if they're not there, you can build them. So if you don't like the main timeline, let's say that we started shoving in ads in between every other post, and it got really annoying.
Don't do that.
But that's an example of the path that we've seen play out, right? But if we did that, you could choose a different timeline, just even within the app. You could uninstall the feed that we're putting all these ads in and install a different one. And so the fact that users have that choice means that we're incentivized to keep serving users, because if we change things to a degree that people didn't like and didn't tolerate, they could switch off to another alternative. And then that's true at different layers. So if you didn't like the app anymore, because let's say we made it a very obnoxious color and put flashing ads across the top of the app, then you could use a different app and access the same network. You would keep your identity, you would keep your data, and just move to a different application that doesn't do that. And so that actually aligns our incentives, because we want to keep things in a place where users want to continue using the app, they want to continue using the timelines and the features that we've built, and that's one of the core principles of alignment.
I'm just going to pause, because what she's talking about there is such a profound shift in how we think about platforms. Right now, the platforms that we use are owned by major corporations. When those platforms decide to make changes, for instance, Instagram implements an algorithm in 2016 that changes how we view content, or in 2025 when Threads adds advertisements in the feed, what recourse do we as users have? Sure, we might be able to use an ad blocker or some other kind of tweak, but at the end of the day, we're essentially powerless. Giving that power to the users for them to make their own version of the platform, I think is an absolutely fantastic concept. If you have an opportunity, please go listen to the rest of this interview. I will link to it in the show notes. You can watch it, of course, on YouTube if you want. This interview actually made me wish that I was at South by Southwest, so that is something I'm going to be thinking about for the future. That is going to do it for today's episode. As always, thank you for listening, and be sure to come back next time for more social media news and strategy that you need to know.
Let me tell you a couple things that you should know about me. A product manager, but do not have a bachelor's degree. But actually, that's factually a fraction of me. And other fractions posting content irregular and irrationally. Still probably won't get a job at the Gram. They forgot, they don't know, or don't care who I am. That's why you never see me at the parties and events. My lack of followers must make me irrelevant. Don't have a course, a book to sell to make a bag of grand. Not a social media marketer, don't represent any brands. Plain to see, don't have an agency, but I got a lot of spam. Just putting in the work, without the glitz and glam. Won't catch me eating fish, unless it's shrimp or clam. No six pack, no risk that, there's a gym card in my hand. Don't have a full-time job, but I got a lot of plans. Stay plotting, dropping knowledge on TikTok and Instagram.